by an outside source. The FBI was lying repeatedly about what it was that they found in their investigations or in their probe. And when that happened, they tracked down James Sanders. They tracked down his source. They went through his telephone records and found out who the source was. And they threatened him. Initially, they said, you tell us who your source is, who was, or we're going to convict you, we're going to prosecute you. And that's exactly, he wouldn't do it. And that's exactly what they did. They prosecuted him and his wife, Elizabeth. Her big crime was she introduced, she was contacted by the source, which was Terrell Stacy, a TWA captain who had flown that very aircraft from Europe to Long Island the day before. And he was on the probe, the party process. They have a lot of different parties in it. And he wouldn't give them up, so they prosecuted him. And they convicted him. And they convicted him of kind of an obscure statute that was passed on in the aftermath of the Value Jet disaster, where people were taking scavengers were taking pieces of the aircraft. So they passed a law that said that's a criminal offense, it's a felony. So that's what So he's obviously an investigative reporter doing his job, and they convicted him of conspiracy to remove parts from an aircraft involved in an aircraft investigation. Air crash investigation. In any event, we filed suit against, and that's a very interesting case and a very interesting lawsuit. That case was transferred to New York. We couldn't get jurisdiction in the District of Columbia, and eventually that was dismissed. That did not go forward. I don't really know exactly why. I wasn't part of that lawsuit at the time. And then I was in Northern California on my way back. I got a call from Ray Lair, who was a retired airline captain and an air crash investigator himself. And he said that he was in federal court in the Central District of Los Angeles, where he lived, and said that he's having some problems with his lawsuit. He was pro se, doing it on without the help of a lawyer. And so I was on my way back from Northern California, and I stopped in, and we met, and I took his case, and we went forward, and that case went on for a number of years, like 6 years, and then we finally hit the ball out of the park. We filed 27 affidavits from fact and expert witnesses in that case, and the judge came down and said that the government acted, he repeatedly said he wasn't going to decide, he wasn't going to rule whether or not it was missile fire. But he did say at one point that 100 people saw the missile intersect with the aircraft. In any event, he said that he went through all of the evidence and did a very, very thorough job, went through all the evidence that we submitted. The case was against the CIA, the National Transportation Safety Board, and the NSA. The NSA was brought into the case belatedly when we finally learned that that they used an NSA computer program to run their simulation of what happened to the aircraft. And what they said was that what the government said was that the front of the aircraft was blown off, the front third, and the rear, and it caused a weight imbalance, and the rear 2/3 of the aircraft shot up the better part of a mile. Ray Lair, air crash investigator, knew that was not true. So he was sort of acting in good faith. He wanted to explain to the investigators that they had their story wrong. And so he filed a FOIA request for the basis of this Zoom climb conclusion, they called it. And we went forward and we kind of hit the ball out of the park, and the judge went through all of our evidence. He said that he explained, and incidentally, the defendants didn't file anything controverting any of our evidence. So the judge took note of that. And he said, well, number one, this explosion from an empty fuel tank is impossible. I mean, this might sound a little strange to your listeners, but jet fuel is not flammable. It's combustible, but not flammable. They can't explode. You have to shake it up and then give it, mix it with air, and then have an ignition source in order for it to explode. And also, the fuel tank was empty. It had been drained. They didn't need all the fuel in the center fueling tank. They drained it, so it was empty and it couldn't explode. It's impossible. I mean, it's never happened before. It's never happened since. And there was, if one of our experts said, well, if there really was a possibility, every single 747 would be grounded until they fixed that problem. Air Force One is a 747. They didn't fix that one. I mean, the whole thing's just ludicrous. So if there's that, and then so that's impossible. I can go through the evidence, but we really don't have time.
Now we got about 5 minutes left. What do you think the missile came from?
I think it came from a Navy exercise. The Navy was conducting classified maneuvers in the waters under the aircraft. They had a P3, Orion P3, at 12,000 feet, about 4,000 feet above, as part of these maneuvers. So it was clearly, well, I shouldn't say clearly. We don't know for sure, but there was an exercise there, and there was missile fire. People had reported missiles off the coast of Long Island in the weeks preceding this shoot down. So I think it was a missile fire that went awry. I think what happened was they shot one missile and it was going in the wrong direction, or it was going towards this passenger aircraft, which of course it should have been going towards. I think that they shot off a drone. It was supposed to shoot down the drone, and then they shot off an anti-missile missile with a proximity fuse to go get to shoot down the missile, the errant missile. And they both converged on TWA Flight 800 at the same time. And the one missile shot through it. We know that from the radar evidence, among other things. Shot right through it at something like 1,200 miles an hour. Went right through the aircraft. And then the proximity fuse, the anti-missile missile, exploded outside the aircraft and blew off the front third of the aircraft. I think that most of the people in there had died almost immediately. In any event, so to me, as I say, if it was shot down by missile fire, it wouldn't be one or two stray pieces of evidence would indicate that. It would be all of the evidence, and all of the evidence does tell us the missile fire. That is the laws of physics, the witnesses. The forensic evidence. There was residue all over that aircraft of explosive residue. One piece of explosive residue was reported in the news media, and the FBI came up with this ridiculous story that it was during that it was deposited on the aircraft during a dog sniffing exercise. But that was, they of course never interviewed the person who did the exercise, and they didn't do it on that aircraft. They did it on a similar aircraft that was parked a little bit further down. But that was their excuse, and that was the New York Times dutifully published that. Reed Irvine, I talked about him earlier. He was on this case too of accuracy in media. And he placed a advertisement. It cost many thousands of dollars, a full-page ad in the New York Times by 6 of the witnesses, saying, and this was with the accounts of 6 witnesses, and it was titled, "We saw Flight 800 be shot down by missile fire, and we won't be silenced any longer." And then it went through all 6 of them, what each of them said, all of their accounts. Now, and I talked to all of them, and that was one of our exhibits in the case. Not one journalist called a single one of those people to interview. Isn't that amazing?
Okay, John Clarke, thank you so much. The website is FBI Cover-Up, FBICover-Up.com. Thank you so much, John.
FBICoverup.com. And let me tell you where Ray Lairs also has a website. If you Google Impossible Zoom Climb, it's all right there.
Thank you, brother.
Possible Zoom fun.
Okay, there we had John Clarke. I thought he didn't have enough more information about TWA. That's why I would have given him more time on it. But the way he sounded, he didn't have that much to share. A couple of things I know about TWA. I've discussed this a couple times. First of all, the couple he's talking about, I've talked to that couple. And they were charged with possessing this debris from the airplane, from the crash. And in the local papers, they were described as scavenger hunters, that were beachcombers, and were enthusiasts, not as investigative reporters. And anyway, I have their information, and I have a friend of mine that's very intimately involved with this couple. Well, not a friend, but the other thing is my best man at my wedding, who was NYPD Harbor Aviation. If you go on YouTube and you look up, I think it's Discovery Channel. NYPD Scuba Cops, NYPD Harbor Aviation. There's a nice little documentary film, and I know all those guys. I know all the guys in the film. They've all been to my wedding. They were all at my friend's wedding. I know all these guys. We've been to bachelor parties together, many functions and events, baseball games. I know these guys, and these are the guys that recovered the debris from TWA 800. A lot of them are former Navy SEALs. They're former Navy. They're former military. And when they were pulling up this debris, they said, no, wait, this absolutely was a missile strike. It was struck by a missile. And they also described, too, that there was naval maneuvers. And it was naval reserves, too. The ship where this missile came from was a naval reserve ship that left the area. Okay, right after this happened, they left. And some of the other ships hung around, but the one that actually shot the missile took off. Okay? Now, people say, well, how could they cover this up? The Navy, all this stuff. Well, let me tell you something. I am familiar with so many incidences in those New York waters with the Navy where NYPD Harbor Aviation had to go and rescue the Navy. My friend got the Police Commissioner's Award, him and his partner, for rescuing the Navy. Okay? Because you got to understand, a lot of these small boats, these patrol boats that the Navy has there in the New York Harbor, they're manned by 17-year-old kids. Everyone on the boat is 17 years old, 18 years old, And what happened was, when he got the Commissioner's Award it was snow and choppy, all ice, and these guys got stuck in the ice, and their plan was they were going to jump out of their boat and jump from one piece of ice to the next and try and make it back to land. That's what these kids were thinking before they were rescued by New York City Police Department. There's been other incidents, too, where they've dropped off their .50 caliber machine guns off their boats and dropped it into the water, and NYPD had to come down and recover this equipment. There is galore, all kinds of, I don't even know how to describe it, just incompetence with these Navy patrol boats and these Navy sailboat, maneuver, going on all over the place. So this idea that another thing that happened to this too. Now this happened after the investigation. I've told this story a couple of times too. Is that when NYPD Harbor Aviation was there, they were landing near this. They had a base of operations, and they were landing their helicopters there, and they were taking off and landing there. Some guy showed up and claimed to be from the Army Corps of Engineers. And says, we got to build a helipad here. We need to order this asphalt. We need to bulldoze to come here and create a helipad for you. This is unsafe. It turned out that the guy was a total hoax. The guy had nothing to do. The guy had no credentials or anything, but he just showed up and started barking out orders, and they built a whole freaking helipad, and all this was covered up. So this idea how stuff can't go on like this, it goes on galore, guys. Okay, this kind of stuff goes on like crazy. Listen, if you enjoyed tonight's show, please, OppermanReport.com, become a member and help support the shows. We're really getting low on memberships, and I'm sticking my neck out here on a lot of stuff lately, with this megaphone for these marches we're doing down here in town. And I'm starting to get my resources stretched real thin, So if you can help out by becoming a member, there's a lot of new content in there. We just put up 3 new shows in there. I got a whole bunch of shows planned this week. And we got William Ramsey's Help Me Book shows. William Ramsey's coming up next, by the way. And then after that, Nick Drago. Or if donation, you want to send a donation, we appreciate your donations at oppermanreport@gmail.com. And also, too, if you want to become a sponsor, if you don't like Indian sponsors, guys, okay, then become a sponsor.